That Time I Got Reincarnated as a slime probably has one of the most intricate and complex world building in the isekai genre. It not only has a highly detailed magic system, but even the very building blocks of life that make up the world itself, like information particles, Spiritrons, Magicules, and so much more, are extremely well written. So in this video, I wanted to go over all the aspects I mentioned and some of the important terminologies used in the series. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share with your friends. In order to better understand how the Tensura magic system functions, we have to first look at what are called fundamental particles, which are considered to be the literal building blocks of the world itself. So starting with the smallest particle that fall under this category, we have information particles, and it can be found in every facet of the world, including in metaphysical concepts such as souls or skills. But to explain what they are, information particles essentially carry the data of all matter in the Tensura world, like their identity, nature, attributes, and properties. However, because information particles are extremely unstable and bypass even the laws of space and time, it's extremely difficult to observe and control, although in certain environments, such as removed stomach space, or if you possess a skill similar to degenerate and synthesize that allows for the partial interference of the information particles inside other skills, you can technically observe their movement and have some level of manipulation over them. But the easiest method for someone to have complete understanding and control over information particles is to either exist as a digital life form like a manas, or awaken into a fully spiritual being like a true demon lord, although for the latter, you have to first be exposed to the sensation of the suspended world in order to unlock the ability to comprehend information particles, similar to how Luminous Valentine and Ultima were able to start moving their own particles within Dagruel's suspended world once they became familiar with the process. Moving on, if we go above a level to information particles, we have what are called Spiritrons, another fundamental particle that is considered to be the equivalent of a neutron found in our world. This means that Spiritrons exist in the neutral state and lack any sort of attributes, which is why they are often infused with other natural attributes to create a type of energy known as spiritual matter. More on them in a bit. And because Spiritrons share the same unstable properties, albeit less erratic as compared to information particles, they are also quite difficult to observe and control, but if one understands the laws of natural Spiritrons transference, then it's possible to predict the movements of the particles and control them. Furthermore, the benefits of manipulating Spiritrons meant that you are qualified to wield holy magic directly, or be able to lend that power to followers who believe in your status as their god, similar to how practitioners of Luminism are able to use holy magic through their worship of Luminous Valentine. However, Spiritrons can be quite dangerous, because when the particles become agitated, you release a type of radiation called dark light that is able to completely destroy the genetic data and information particles inside a living being. That's why Spiritrons are the most effective against spiritual life forms, since it directly affects the soul of a target. Now, having mentioned the term soul, this is essentially the component that gives all living beings their identity and consciousness, along with being the source of power and housing for ultimate level skills. But what exactly makes up a soul? Well, in the Tensura world, the structure of a soul can be separated into layers, with the innermost part holding the ego, a type of amorphous wavelength comprised of information particles that carry the identity and consciousness of living beings, which is why ego is commonly referred to as the source of a person's sense of self and personality. That's why for powerful beings like true dragons, even if their body or soul is completely destroyed, as long as their ego remains intact, they can pretty much resurrect indefinitely, although it might just take a very long time. That said, the ego isn't the only part of a soul, because going above a layer we have the nucleic heart, which is a protective housing made of information particles that stores the memories of a living being and other miscellaneous data about them, and every living being has a different type of nucleic heart. For plants or animals, it will be smaller because the data will be lesser, whereas for sentient beings, the size and quality will differ as well depending on how strong their ego is. And if their ego is extremely strong, the nucleic heart will serve as a layer where ultimate or sometimes extremely powerful unique skills manifest themselves, and it was for this reason it's basically impossible for skills rooted here to be stolen because of the direct connection to someone's essence. But continuing on, the final layer to the soul is called the energy or soul crystal, which is a collection of spiritrons that surrounds the nucleic heart, serving as a protective container and source of power for all living beings. And the energy crystal is normally what people in the Tensura world think of when the term soul is used, because the energy that radiates from it usually carries a type of soul wavelength that is distinct to the host and the part connected to the astral body. Hence why this layer is often mistaken for the essence of a soul. And depending on the size and type of your nucleic heart, the quality and amount of the spiritrons stored inside the energy crystal will be vastly different. Nonetheless, on the topic of astral body, this is the vessel that protects the soul from dissipating to the surroundings and being released into the cycle of reincarnation. But not only that, it behaves like a computational device that helps to translate and communicate the will and desire of your ego to the spiritual body. However, because the astral body is comprised solely of Magicules, it requires a stabilizing medium, otherwise you slowly disappear as well. And this brings me to my next point, the spiritual body, which is the layer that provides the actual protection to the astral body and soul from the environment, while also acting as the container where your memories along with overall energy are stored. It's for this reason the spiritual body is normally the part measured when it comes to the existence value of someone, although the content of your soul does get added to the equation as well. Furthermore, the spiritual body is also categorized into two types, semi-spiritual and fully spiritual. The former means the individual possesses a physical body unbound by flesh and lifespan. You are able to survive and regenerate from fatal injuries to organs, although you will still die if the spiritual body gets destroyed. And one can acquire a semi-spiritual form either through evolution or training, but there are natural born ones like insectas, cryptids, and the tangle race. As for the fully spiritual form, all your physical limitations have been removed, and you are no longer held back by your spiritual body, meaning you can simply exist with an astral body. But despite this, even for fully spiritual beings like true dragons, they still choose to keep their spiritual bodies just to prevent the Magicules from their astral bodies to dissipate, because resurrecting normally comes at the cost of potential memory and personality loss. So following the spiritual body, we have the material body at the final layer, and is the anchor that tethers the spiritual body to the physical plane. Like demons that crosses over from the spiritual world require a material body, otherwise they'll slowly disappear and be forced to return to the spiritual world. And similar to the spiritual body, the material body is separated into two distinct categories, with those being fully and semi-spiritual material. So with the first one, this simply refers to beings that can only exist in the physical worlds because their bodies don't have any spiritual qualities to carry out things like interacting, storing, or controlling Magicules, and the inhabitants of Earth fall under this category. For the latter, having a semi-material form means you possess some spiritual qualities, allowing for the manipulation of Magicules and usage of magic, but because you are still bound to a physical body, you are still subjected to things like biological functions. And most of the inhabitants in the Tensura cardinal world belongs to this category. But anyways, with the fundamentals covered, we can now go into the spiritual matters I mentioned earlier in the video, because they are essentially the sources of power that allow the magic system of Tensura to function. First, we have Magicules, which is by far the most used spiritual matter for not only powering magic spells and skills, but also serving as the sustenance for all Magicule-based life forms such as margins, monsters, and demi-humans. Additionally, Magicules are highly reactive to the thoughts and emotions of living beings as well. So what I mean by this is the fact that if you have a basic understanding of natural principles, you can simply form a mental image like say a fireball, and it will cause the Magicules to manifest them into reality. And you can go even further with this. If your desire and willpower are strong enough, along with having been acknowledged by the voice of the world, Magicules can even cause skills that matches your desires to be created, which is commonly the process that happens whenever an otherworlder crosses to the Tensura world. However, acquiring skills will always cause a permanent decrease to your Magicule capacity, but you can still increase the amount either through training or evolution, although it does depend on your race. For instance, Gobtat's Magicule capacity will no longer increase no matter how high he trains, because as a hobgoblin he has already maxed out his potential, and the only way is to awaken into something beyond his current level. Regardless, Magicules can be quite dangerous as well depending on the concentration, because it can cause Magicule poisoning to untrained individuals, especially humans, or even extreme environmental changes and mutations to the areas or living beings. For example, the once green western plains of Dagruel's domain were turned into a complete barren desert due to the destructive Magicules left behind after the fight between Milim and Gi, or how the minerals, flora, and fauna inside the Silk Cave had all mutated from being exposed to Baldra's energy over a long duration. Next is Holy Energy, and like the name implies, this is mainly used for casting holy magic, and it's a byproduct of fusing Spiritrons with the attribute of light. But as a subsequent result of this, Holy Energy is actually considered to be the inverse of Magicules, which means it's poisonous to most Magicule-based life forms thanks to the properties of purification, cleansing, and healing it has. That's why it's often used for monster and demon extermination, although it doesn't mean they're incapable of accessing Holy Energy, and the reason is because this behaves in a similar fashion to Magicules, in that it's reactive towards the thoughts and emotions of someone, so it's not surprising that people like Adalman, Shuna, and Diablo are capable of casting holy magic just by using their connection to the Muru. But adversely, this is also the weakness of Holy Energy since it's quite conditional. You are required to either form a pact with someone who can harness this power, or be said person yourself, and even then, if your faith is lacking, the intensity of the holy magic casted will be weaker and vice versa. Either way, the last spiritual matter is called aura or spirit, which is the energy released by all living beings, but unlike the previous two I mentioned, this particular power is more physical in nature, meaning it directly affects things like the material body or physical objects in the cardinal world. That's why this is commonly used for enhancing your physical abilities to superhuman levels without the need for magic or skills, while being able to improve the performance of your equipped gear as well. And the most basic type of aura is called fighting spirit, which is often a prerequisite for battle will, and this allows you to deliver powerful physical attacks or effects that resemble magic, but for more proficient users, their fighting spirit can be harnessed to effectively nullify any abilities or effects that rely on Magicules to function, making this extremely effective against spiritual life forms. You can even pair fighting spirit with Magicules to create something called mystic arts, which is a far more potent technique for taking down spiritual life forms like demons. Also, depending on the quality and amount of aura, you can roughly estimate the danger level and strength of the individual. In any case, we can now finally go over mana, also known as magic power, a type of energy used to control all the spiritual matters I have covered to either activate skills, cast magic, or carry out the naming process. And mana itself is quite unique depending on the person, as no one shares the same energy signature, which is why if someone possesses the skill mana perception, you can easily identify them without even directly seeing them. But in addition to this, the way mana is circulated inside the body is different as well. For humans and demi-humans, mana flow is maintained through their normal blood circulatory system, whereas for monsters, magical or spiritual beings, they rely on something called a mana circuit to maintain the flow of mana inside their body. And it's actually due to this very organ that makes them more vulnerable against skills like mana interference or attacks made from fighting spirit. Regardless, because mana itself is comprised of one's vitality, spiritual energy, and soul power, it will normally result in physical or mental fatigue if your supply depletes, similar to what happened after the moon named all the goblins and direwolves back in season 1. And the easiest way to recover mana is to just sleep and rest, but a more efficient method is to consume food that contains high concentration of Magicules, like the black rice produced by the Tempest Federation, so that the body can convert the food into mana. However, overexerting your mana supply can sometimes lead to death or cause permanent damage to your circulation system, although the latter is more common as compared to the former because most of the time, death from mana exhaustion is often caused by external forces intentionally draining your mana. Also, similar to Magicules, you can increase your mana capacity through training or evolution, but there is a limit. And did you know that true dragons don't actually possess an infinite amount of mana? Rather, their capacity is just so insanely big that by the time they manage to make a dent, it would have already naturally recovered. Now that we understand how mana works, we can move on to the topic of magic itself, which is fairly diverse with various different types being utilized by the inhabitants of the Tensura world, but the main ones are spectral magic, elemental magic, holy magic, and summoning magic. Starting with spectral magic, it's the most common type of magic because you only need to have imagination and a basic understanding of magical manipulation to literally manifest abstract ideas into reality. For example, if you want to create spears made of ice, all you have to do is to first think about how ice is made with low temperature, then form the mental image of the ice spears inside your mind, and finally using mana to manipulate the Magicules to create the ice spears. And because spectral magic are just Magicules inhabiting a form, spells under this category aren't affected by physical factors like how Remove's black flame can be extinguished by natural water and can essentially run indefinitely as long as it has the Magicules to sustain the spell. Adding to this, spectral magic is highly versatile as well, encompassing a majority of the magic branches found in the Tensura series, and I'll just leave all the known ones on the screen for you to see. But aside from this, regardless of the typing that falls under the spectral magic category, you can also compound different effects together to create stronger spells, although the more complex and powerful it becomes, the more difficult and time-consuming it will be to cast. That's why people sometimes rely on incantations or even magic circles to help improve the casting. Although if you have skills like chant annulment and thought acceleration, you can easily improve the computational efficiency of your mind. Next we have elemental magic, which refers to magic that comes from the natural attribute found in the world like fire, water, earth, wind, light and dark, along with the addition of time and space. But unlike spectral magic, the magic belonging to this category adheres to the laws of physics and derives power from within, which is why in anti-magic areas, elemental magic can still be used. And this category of magic is commonly used by elemental spirits such as Ifrit, although normal living beings are able to harness elemental magic as well by forming contracts with elemental spirits, and highly proficient users can even summon their contracted spirits to use their powers directly. On a side note, necromancy also falls into this category for some reason, and is considered the type of magic that relies on negative energy, which is apparently different from the dark attribute. As for holy magic, even though it's a separate category, it can technically still be counted as elemental magic. because it not only uses holy energy as a power source but Spiritrons as well. And to use holy magic, one has to either form a pact with God or be God themselves, which in this case, God is just someone who can manipulate Spiritrons. And holy magic can be separated into two types: basic spells that rely on holy energy as the source of power. It's mostly used for healing, but it does have a few offensive options that is highly effective against Magicule-based life forms. Then we have miracle level spells, the strongest type of holy magic, allowing users to either resurrect people from the dead or outright destroy their very existence, because it uses Spiritrons as the main power source, which can easily pierce through the information particles of a target, with disintegration being the most notable spell that functions on this principle. Continuing on to summoning magic, this essentially allows you to summon a living being from another plane of reality to your current location, and is probably the most complex given the various conditions it requires to utilize the magic. So to explain, depending on the type of summoning magic, whether it be demon, elemental or otherworldly summoning, but a general rule of thumb is that it requires a lot of mana, and you must have mastery over spatial magic. With demon summoning, this is the most common type, and it normally involves some type of payment through either feeding the demon Magicules or leaving sacrifices for them to create a physical body, although the amount depends on the age of the demon. Also, even though a summoned demon will form binding contracts that prevents them from hurting or betraying the summoner, there's no guarantee of that once the contract is completed, like the case involving Guy Crimson, who after completed his contract returned to destroy the country of his summoners. As for elemental summoning, it requires less mana since most elemental spirits lack any form of sentience, although for the ones that do possess an ego such as Ifrit, they seem to be even more prideful than demons, like the way Ifrit previously behaved when he was binded to Shizuizawa. Next, we have otherworldly summoning, and this is probably the most annoying type because it requires an enormous amount of mana, around 30 talented mages to perform the ritual, and it can last for 30 days just to summon someone. But even then, the success rate is less than 1%. There's even a cooldown period enforced by the world itself that prevents the ritual from being performed again in succession. Also, this magic is widely considered illegal by most nations, since having otherworlders who possess unique skills will significantly boost their military might, and not to mention they're far stronger than the humans native to the Tensura world. And despite the illegal nature of summoning magic, they are still being conducted secretly, especially when Leon Cromwell developed a more simplified technique that not only requires less resources, it isn't subjected to the usual restrictive cooldown period as well. However, this new technique often resulted in the summoning of children who are unable to manifest a skill when they cross over to the Tensura world. This meant they have no way to expel their existing mana and will always lead to their deaths within 5 years. Shizuizawa and the children of Class S are examples of otherworlders that were summoned with this inhumane technique. Now, before I end the video, I want to quickly mention some of the miscellaneous magic types that don't fall under the 4 main types. For starters, dark magic is a school of magic mostly associated and used by demons, which harnesses something called nihilistic energy, a type of antimatter or power derived from the void. That's why dark magic was described in the light novel to have the potential to destroy the world if used by the wrong people, and the only way to stop this type of magic is with positive energy, although it's unknown what that refers to. And currently, Ultima's nihilistic banish is the only time dark magic has been shown in the anime. Next is something called physics magic, and this was developed by Rimuru using the scientific knowledge of his previous work combining with elemental magic. The most notable example is Megiddo, which uses water magic to create convex lenses to focus sunlight into concentrated beams of light and then reflecting the rays towards the intended targets. And because this relies on natural sunlight, the spell isn't affected by anti-magic areas. Then we have illusion magic, a type of magic that not only allows for the creation of illusion and affecting the senses, more complex versions can even directly interfere with the astral body, spiritual body, or even the soul, like Razan's usage of his possession ability to permanently take over Shogo's body after destroying his mind. For the last one is True Dragon magic, and it's a type of elemental magic that can only be used by the respective True Dragons, and it's a type of elemental magic that can only be used by the respective True Dragon, although if someone possesses their dragon factor or have a soul connection with them, they're capable of using True Dragon magic as well. To give some examples, Milim is able to use star magic like her father, the Star King Dragon Valdonava, because she inherited his powers after she was born, and the same is for Rimuru, who is able to use storm magic due to his soul corridor and family name with Valdora, but later it did obtain the ability to use Scorch magic as well, having consumed the parallel existence of the Scorch Dragon Valgren. Also, even though Valza's dragon factor was taken away by Feltway in the light novel, she apparently still has access to frost magic. But yeah, that's everything you need to know about the magic system, the terminology, and the fundamental principles that belong to the series. And hopefully you enjoyed this comprehensive look at the world building of Tensura, which honestly surprised me for how detailed it was. With that said, what are your thoughts on the topic? Feel free to share your opinions about everything down below, and check out my other video on the world building of ReZero. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button to stay updated with all my content. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.